Good morning and welcome back. It is now June the 20th and it is overcast and cool with a forecast for rain today. We did get about 1/4 of an inch of rain in various thunderstorms over the weekend, and we are now starting to see a little bit of disease starting to develop in some of these cereals. So in this barley here, there's a few spots of net blotch here and there starting to develop, as well as some scald, especially on some of these lower leaves down here. So some of this is, oh, that wasn't scald, that was blotch. There's some scald right there. So there is some starting to develop, and we are at flag leaf timing in here. Some of the awns are actually starting to emerge. So if we wanted to do a flag leaf timing fungicide, we would have very limited time to get in here and get this done. Well, this dryland durum is doing a lot better this week. This stuff was pretty much on death's door 2 weeks ago before we started to get some rain. It's now doing pretty good. It's tillering out pretty normally now, and it's starting to fill in. There is still some new emergence going on here and there as well, the thinner areas of the field. But of course now there's a pile of weed emergence in here too, between kochias and volunteer canolas and all sorts of stuff coming up in here. So we need to get these guys sprayed here pretty soon. Well, some of these dryland yellow peas are just starting to flower. You can see the canopy is still fairly open because of that early season drought stress. However, now we have a few flowers open and we have high humidity and high available moisture. So disease is going to be starting to develop in here. You can already see a few spots here and there in the leaves that look like they're going to be turning into something here. So any of the there is many different fungicide products from different companies that is marketed at this time. So products like Delero, Alatus, etc., etc. All of them will give you a couple weeks protection from disease in peas like this. We're actually getting quite the crop of mushrooms starting to emerge here now. These little guys are popping up all over the place now that we've got some moisture. I'm not sure what species they are, and therefore they are definitely not safe to eat. But interesting to see anyway. Something I really need to work on actually is my mushroom identification. I am certainly not very good at it. Well, I'm really starting to feel like we're going to have some very weedy crops. This barley, for example, is just about to be in head emergence. It's mostly in boot stage. A few awns starting to come out, and it's not quite knee tall. Health-wise, looking pretty good right now. But it did get its in-crop herbicide about 3 weeks ago at 3 to 4 leaf stage. And we got good kill on the weeds that were here at the time. But now that we've had a couple weeks of rain and moisture, you can see we got a huge crop of kochia, lots of little Russian thistles. There's canola coming up all over the place. And now, of course, we're out of staging to spray because we have awn emergence. So some of these crops, because they are so short, are not going to give us great competition against some of these weeds. So we are going to be seeing weed patches in some of these fields, even though we did the proper things at the proper times. Just can't help the weather. Well, here's some winter wheat that is heading out. It is still very short. We're basically at the height of my gumboot, and a few of them are just starting to flower. Although growing conditions are really good right now, they weren't so good a few weeks ago, which is why this crop is so short. But regardless, it is doing what it's gonna do, and it's gonna hopefully fill these heads out as best as it can. Well, some of the canola acres are starting to look a little bit better. This field is kind of averaging 3 to 4 leaf now. We'll be in rosette stage here pretty soon. Stand density is still improving. There is still some new ones coming up here. However, we do have a little bit of flea beetle feeding going on in here, which is not surprising considering this seed has been sitting in the soil now for over 35 days. So seed treatment is pretty much worn off. Canola at this stage of the year pretty much always looks fairly ugly unless you're on irrigation and you have a really beautiful stand that emerges all at the same time. This was not the case on this dryland field, but it looks better than some that I've seen. Oh, the corn out by Nobleford is doing pretty good this week. It's developing not too bad, although it is a little bit weather beaten. There's lots of kinked leaves, which is causing them to kind of go purple and die off on us here. But overall doing pretty good, although we do have a lot of buckwheat emergence, especially in some of these patches here. So we're going to come in here with Sortan right away, and that Sortan does a pretty damn good job taking care of buckwheat. So that should help thin this out before it starts to stunt the corn too much. So that should be getting done here in the next week. Here's a fun weed I don't often get a chance to show. This is curled dock. It likes wet areas, mostly waste areas. It's a member of the buckwheat family, and you'll see the distinctive buckwheat shaped seeds when it does develop a seed head. Although it's, well, it is getting close. You can see flower buds are starting to form there, but it's probably flower in the next couple weeks. Here we have some smartweed that has emerged. This particular smartweed is known as lady's thumb. You can see the painted fingernail on there. And this stuff can actually get fairly tall, but right now it's still pretty small. It really likes wet areas like around this pivot point. This very dirty canola field was hit with Liberty a few days ago. Actually, it was Saturday afternoon, and you can see right around the pivot point here, right where a miss is, where the sprayer went around. So that was unapplied. This is applied. One beautiful thing about Liberty is it works fast, and it is very visually dramatic. So you definitely know what has been hit and what has not. So hopefully now this canola can take off and start growing. Well, some of the later seeded cereals like this barley, which is just now hitting the 4th leaf stage, are going to have a little bit better yield potential than some of the earlier seeded stuff, because this was determining head size after we got some moisture. A lot of the earlier seeded stuff was determining its head size and therefore its kind of final yield while it was under severe drought stress. This stuff does not have that stress, so it has very good yield potential. However, it is already starting to develop a few spots of disease here and there, so we're going to have to watch out for that. This would be a good case of, you know, being able to throw some tilt or something into the tank at herbicide timing, give us a little bit of disease protection, shut down some of that early disease. Well, this very nice looking stand of irrigated canola is going to be getting its second application of glyphosate today. Although this spot here looks pretty good, there is some pretty heavy kochia around the edges. But this stuff is starting to bolt. TrueFlex now, that's not nearly so much of a concern. We can pretty much spray glyphosate at 0.67 liters right up till very first flower. So we still have time in this field, and that's great. Well, the fall rye has pretty much finished flowering and is getting close to silage timing. Some of this will probably start getting chopped next week. Once you look down at the base, you can see where it was lodged really bad last week after the rains. You can see it is still kind of lodged down there. It's not completely kinked off, but what it's done is it's lodged over, it's bent, and it's kind of just coming right back up. So 3/4 of the plant is up at a harvestable height, but some of the bottoms are still pretty much kinked over, so it's going to be difficult to grab those. Definitely got to make sure that the reel speed and angle is set properly to pick that up. Well, corn by Lethbridge is looking really good this week. It's actually growing really fast now, which is nice to see. We are behind in heat units compared to where we should be for the year, and that is going to start showing an effect on the corn with reduced development here, and until we get some more bright sunny days. Weed control in here looking pretty good. We hit it with Roundup and Sortan probably, I'd say looking at this probably 4 or 5 days ago. So these guys are going down pretty hard, so that's nice to see. Removing weed competition is key to having high yielding corn. Oh, somebody's been joyriding through my field by Lethbridge. This field, it just seems there's no end to the problems. If it's not garbage and stolen property and old couches, it's people doing burnouts and putting tracks through the fields. Man, I really hate city people sometimes. Lentils by McGrath are looking pretty good this week. They're developing quite a bit nicer now that they've had some more consistent moisture. So looking good here. They are nodulating pretty well as well. They're still pretty short. There's still lots of time for them to fill in. I don't think we're going to see flowers in here for at least another week or two yet at this point. And hopefully they pick up a bit of height by then. Well, some of the better looking winter wheat down here is really starting to develop some powdery mildew, and that is not uncommon in winter wheat, especially now that we've gotten moisture and the rows are filling in. It's restricting airflow, and this is spreading quite quickly. It's generally quite easy to control. In this case, it's about halfway up in some spots here, but it seems to only be in the low spots that have really good moisture and a really thick crop. The vast majority of the field, there's very little of it. Well, Friday morning now, and it is cool and just starting to rain. So we got a system moving in from the north. We're supposed to be getting 5 to 15 millimeters of rain today. So I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of anything going on today, but it will be nice to get some of the moisture topped up in the upper profile, keep some of these plants growing quickly.